Hello and welcome back to History Tweaks. This time we go out to the sequel of the Franco-British Union and look at another alternate history scenario, this time based around India. But first, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon to stay updated about the videos. The Indian National Army, headed by Subhash Chandra Bose, was an army composed of Indian POWs or prisoners of war in the Axis powers, whose aim was to fight for Indian independence from outside India's soil. The army and the initiative by Netaji received a varied spectrum of opinions both in its day and still does today. Most of the people perceive it as an instrument which brought independence to the subcontinent. Some even go as far as saying that it was the last nail in the coffin of the British Raj. But there are also opinions against it. Some say it was a failure, and some even paint it in the Nazi colors. Some historians and civilians, particularly in the West, perceive it as a fascist army who was a puppet to the Axis powers. Some go as far as to say that Subhash Chandra Bose was a fascist demagogue, but this is a bit harsh because though Subhash Chandra Bose was attracted to fascism and Nazism to bring about rapid economic and industrial progress in both Germany and Italy, he did not like the authoritarian system of government, especially in the long term. As one of his quote goes, I know that fascism is bad. It may be worse than British imperialism, but as they say in Indian medicine, it takes a poison to kill another poison. The story of Indian National Army starts in India. Netaji has disagreements with Gandhiji and the Congress Working Committee and hence resigns the post of president. He is then put under house arrest by the British, but he escapes. Then, traveling through Afghanistan and Russia, he reaches Berlin. In Berlin, with help from the Nazi authorities, he liberates the Indian prisoners of war and composes them into an army known as the Indian Legion. He also starts the Provisional Government of Free India in exile, or the Arzi Hukumat-e-Azad Hind. But when Hitler declares war on the USSR, Netaji's plans of routing the Indian Legion through USSR and attacking India are put on hold indefinitely, and as a contract has been signed that the Indian Legion cannot fight on any front other than in India, the Indian Legion gets trapped in Germany. And hence he makes a journey on a German U-boat from Bremen to the Cape of Good Hope, where he transfers on to a Japanese submarine on which he reaches Saigon in Indochina. On August 1942, in Saigon, an British Indian officer who was a prisoner of war persuaded the Japanese authorities to liberate the prisoners of war and compose the Indian National Army, led by the Indian freedom fighter Raj Bihari Bose. But when Netaji reached Saigon in 1943, the command of INA was transferred to him, and he also transferred the Arzi Hukumat-e-Azad Hind from Berlin to Saigon. In 1943, British Burma also fell to the Japanese, and the headquarters of the RC Hukumat was transferred from Saigon to Rangoon. The Japanese also transferred the control of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands to the Azad Hind Government, and the islands were renamed Shahid and Swaraj Islands. On the 18th of March 1944, the Indian National Army raised its flag for the first time on the Indian mainland near Kohima. In June 1944, the city of Kohima was captured by the Indian National Army, and in July, the city of Imphal also fell. These victories, however, were short-lived, and the plans of the INA to reach Bengal were not fulfilled as the Japanese started losing in the Pacific Front to the United States of America, and they had to withdraw from Burma. In May 1945, Germany had capitulated to the Allies, and America dropped the two atomic bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki on the 6th and 9th of August 1945, hence capitulating Japan too. Having no other way, Netaji disbanded the Indian National Army and the Azad Hind Government, and as the official report goes, boarded a plane to Tokyo. And according to the official report, the plane crashed at the Taihoku Air Base and Netaji died due to the burn sustained. This then gave rise to one of the biggest mysteries in Indian history, that did Netaji die in the plane crash of 1945, or did he go on to Russia, or did he come back to India under a guise, etc. etc. It seems we would never know that, but let's see what if all that changed. What if the Indian National Army succeeded in its mission to liberate India? And even though India got its independence in 1947, this independence was not any of the freedom fighters had hoped for. It divided the subcontinent on basis of religion into Pakistan and India. There was a huge problem of integrating the princely states into the republic. Bangladesh went on to become its own independent country in 1971 and became the ally to India, and Pakistan still remains our enemy. So on and so forth. You get the point. But what if all that changed? What if the Indian National Army had succeeded in its goal of liberating India from the British Raj? But mind you, against popular belief that the goal of the Indian National Army was not to capture the whole of India like the Axis powers, rather, the whole world had thought back then. Because its leaders knew that if they captured the whole of India, India would be susceptible to become a puppet of either Japan or Germany or some other Axis power, which would be even worse than British imperialism. Their goal was to reach as far as Bengal to Chittagong or capture Bengal if possible. Because Netaji believed that once he liberated Bengal, the populace of Bengal and eventually the whole of India would rise up against the British and put them into a difficult position during the war, and hence would pressurize them to grant independence to the Indians. With the declaration of the Quit India movement and the Do or Die slogan in 1942 by the Indian National Congress and Gandhiji, this idea of waking India's soul into a mass uprising with the help of the INA was further entrenched into the mind of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. And hence, we can say in our timeline they had succeeded about 50% because they reached the Indian soil and were very close to Bengal, but somehow they didn't reach Bengal. But when the officers and soldiers of the Indian National Army were to be put on trial, there were mass uprisings in India, even in the armies and the navies, which led the British to leave them and ultimately give India its independence. And hence, I would not say that INA failed, but neither did succeed. But now let's see what if they had. What if the INA had reached Bengal? The divergence to this timeline does not occur in India or with the Indian National Army, rather with the Empire of Japan. Japan on the 7th of December 1941 had bombed the Pearl Harbor port of America. Hence, America declared war on Japan and went to war with Germany and the Axis powers on the Allied side. But Japan could not match America neither navally, nor militarily, nor in terms of research. And this was the fatal mistake which led to the downfall of the Japanese in the Second World War. And hence, in this timeline, either persuaded or, if need be, commanded by Hitler, the Japanese army keeps its plans of attacking America on hold and contributes to the war effort of Germany against Soviet Union. And hence, in 1942, Germany and Japan attack Russia. Seeing his plans put on hold, Netaji travels from Germany to Saigon and takes over the command of the Indian National Army. Initially, both Germany and Japan make good headway into the USSR, but by 1944, the German war effort starts stalling and the Russian starts pushing back. In 1944, British Burma also falls to Japan and the Indian National Army starts fighting on the Indian front. On the other hand, Japan also makes good headway and conquers a lot of Russian Siberia from the USSR. In March of 1944, the city of Kohima is sieged, and by June, the city falls to the Indian National Army. In July 1944, the city of Imphal also falls. On the other hand, the USSR starts pushing back the German front, and the Western Allies capture the Italian peninsula and start pushing northwards. But Japan is still making good headway into Siberia. By December 1944, the Indian National Army sieges and captures the city of Dhaka in Bengal. And by February of 1945, the state of Assam also falls. After capturing Dhaka, Netaji urges the populace of India to rise up against its British oppressors and free themselves. There are mass protests throughout Bengal, and even the navy and the army and the police officers in Bengal start revolting. In Europe, Russia has pushed a lot into German territory, conquering half of Poland, but the Germans are able to halt their advance, as without the US, the Western Allies advanced relatively slowly. And then Japan, in its infamously stupid way, losing ground to the Soviets in Siberia, attacks the Pearl Harbor in America. America, who had been mobilizing and waiting for the right opportunity, instantly declares war on Japan and Germany. Over in India, sensing the right time and the patriotic fervor, the Indian National Congress and Gandhiji called for a mass movement known as the Azad Hind Movement. The mass protests soon spread to India, even reaching the princely states of Hyderabad and Mysore. In the month of July 1945, Gandhiji, Sardar Patel, and Pandit Nehru go to Dhaka to meet their former colleague Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. They hold debates and discussions over the conduct of the national movement. Finally, after 3 days of meetings, the four put forward a plan for the future. After returning to Wardha, Gandhiji publicly congratulates Netaji and the INA in achieving its goals and liberating Bengal. He also gives Netaji the credit of starting a national movement and names the movement the Azad Hind Movement. On the other hand, from Dhaka through his Azad Hind radio, Netaji appeals to the people of nation to keep their protests peaceful. He also urges them not to harm any British civilians as this might earn them the ill will of the Allies and especially America. He also renames the government to Hukumat-e-Azad Hind and also starts disbanding the Indian National Army and stringing them into the mainstream protests. With the army gone, he also starts cutting ties with the Axis powers. In the September of 1945, Nehruji and Sardar Patel visit America to earn the goodwill and the support of the Americans, who were positive about the pleas of Indian independence for a long time. They curry support from the populace as well as the government, and finally, in October of 1945, the government of United States formally and internationally recognizes the Azad Hind Government. Around the same time, Netaji, along with his brother Sharat Chandra Bose and Professor K.T. Shah, visit the Soviet Union to curry support with Stalin, and Stalin too recognizes the Azad Hind Government. This comes in handy as the Axis powers start losing ground. Japan starts losing its Pacific Islands one by one to the US Navy, and on the other hand, by February of 1946, Germany is jointly captured by the Soviet Union and the Western Allies and capitulates. On the 6th and 9th of April 1946, two atomic bombs are dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, capitulating the Japanese Empire as well. Germany is divided up into occupation zones by the various allies, and Japan is put under US control. And even in the peace treaty dominated by the US and the USSR, there are no charges pushed against the Azad Hind government, the Indian National Army, or the Indian protesters, and it is proclaimed that, quote, it is the realization of the right of independence by the Indians. Even within the British Empire, there are large sectors of people who support the Indian independence movement. And in the peace treaty, it is also said that, quote, the Azad Hind movement is a glorious revolution counted alongside the Magna Carta, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, and the Great October Revolutions. Over on the other hand, in India, the sudden outburst of the Azad Hind movement had caught the Muslim League off guard, and Jinnah was not able to call for direct action or put his claims forward for the country of Pakistan. In May 1946, he tries to call for a direct action, and there are some incidents where the protest turns communal, but they remain majorly a national event. Seeing the dangers of India splitting up into civil war, Subhash Chandra Bose invites Muhammad Ali Jinnah to Dhaka for a meeting. After a long round of talks spanning 4 to 5 days, Jinnah finally gives up his claim for a separate country of Pakistan and accepts to a united India with the federal form of government where each state would have a good degree of autonomy. He also gives up his claim for having a separate constitution for the Muslims. In return, Netaji promises Jinnah that he would personally make sure that the state remains truly secular and that the rights and the interests of the Muslims are not harmed. It is also decided that to avoid underrepresentation, there will be certain seats in the parliament reserved for Muslims. In return of abolishing the system of separate electorates for Muslims, which was established by the British. On the other hand, the British were being pressurized by the Americans and were battered both militarily and economically and were losing their grip on the subcontinent, tried to appease the masses by relinquishing the charges and the claims of trial on Subhash Chandra Bose and promising that he won't be arrested. In the August of 1946, a meeting between the working committees of the Indian National Congress, the All India Muslim League, and the All India Forward Bloc is conducted in the city of Lucknow. Here, the various proposals and points made in the meeting between Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and Muhammad Ali Jinnah is put into formal action and accepted by the three parties. During the meeting, the three parties are also formally merged into the Indian Independence Party or the Azad Hind Party. During this time, the government and officials of the British Raj are virtually sieged in the cities of Delhi and Bombay. Even though no one harms the British officials or the civilians, they are ostracized and boycotted by the Indian public. Seeing the precarious situation, Britain makes preparation to evacuate its officers and government from India and hurriedly puts forward an Act of Parliament to give India its independence. On the 4th of January 1947, the Indian Independence Act passes in the House of Commons and House of Lords of Britain. And on the 26th of January 1947, the Viceroy approves the Indian Independence Act, and India formally becomes an independent country, and the Republic of India is proclaimed with the capital at New Delhi. With independence achieved, the bigger questions start coming in front of everyone, like how would be the constitution of India, what form of government would India assume, and who would lead India during the time the constitution is being made. It is a well known fact that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose admired the ability of fascism and one party authoritarian regimes to bring about rapid economic and military progress. And hence, Netaji wanted that after independence, India should be ruled by a one party system, though not very authoritarian, for 20 years to bring about economic progress and to rebuild the self respect of Indians which had been broken during the British rule. And in this timeline, with the credibility of being the person who drove out the British from India, he is able to put these plans forward to the party. There are many verbal protests by multiple leaders of the independence movement, by the likes of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and even Pandit Nehru. But when through his good oratory skills, Netaji explains his real intentions to the party and the public of having a nominally authoritarian one party system to avoid political turmoil, which would slow economic development, and to bring India to the level of the Western powers, the discontent leaders are appeased and agree to hold a meeting to decide the specifics of the same scheme. It is decided that at the provincial level, the government will continue to be democratic and the procedures followed throughout the British rule will be continued, except for some like the separate electorates or the segregation, etc. It is also decided that the one party rule would be for 15 years rather than 20. 18 people are selected from mostly within the Indian Independence Party, but some are also selected from outside the party. These 18 people is composed into a committee which is named the Provisional Government of India or Hindustan Ki Arzi Hukumat. This committee becomes the central government of India and each of its members takes one of the portfolios required for governing the country. Dr. Rajendra Prasad is made the president, while Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose becomes the prime minister. The Ministry of Home and External Affairs is taken by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting is taken by Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. The Ministry of External Affairs is handled by Jawaharlal Nehru, and the Ministry of Agriculture is handled by Lal Bahadur Shastri. The Ministry of Arts is taken by H.S. Sohrawardy, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah becomes the Education Minister. Rajkumari Amrit Kaur is given the Health Ministry, while C.H. Bhabha is given the Commerce Ministry. Liaquat Ali Khan becomes the Finance Minister, and Shah Nawaz Khan takes over Defence. C. Rajgopalachari becomes the Minister of Industry and Supplies, while Jagjeevan Ram is made the Labour Minister. The Ministry of Rail and Communication is handled by Abur Rab Nishtar, while the Ministry of Post and Air is taken by Aruna Asaf Ali. The Ministry of Works, Mines and Power is taken by Netaji's brother Sharat Chandra Bose, while B.R. Ambedkar becomes the Law Minister of India. In March, the 386-member Constituent Assembly is composed of various elected and appointed members from the various provinces and the princely states of India, and Dr. Rajendra Prasad is elected its chairman. Just as in our timeline, the responsibility of integrating the many princely states of India falls on Vallabhbhai Patel, the Home Minister. Without having the option to go to Pakistan, most of the princely states accede right away. But just as in our timeline, Hyderabad creates a problem. But after having a good round of discussion with the Hyderabadi elite, the princely states of Hyderabad formally accedes to the union. The government also starts enacting strict laws to maintain the cohesiveness of the nation and avoid political turmoil. The intelligence bureau is used to put suspicious individuals under surveillance, and some extremist political parties are also banned. The press is also censored to an extent. But apart from this, the other rights of the people, like right of worship and propagation of culture or right of movement, is retained. The courts are also allowed to work, but it is made illegal to file a complaint against the government. With the princely states into the Union and the government secured, the first 5 year plan of independent India is released by the government in 1947. The aims of this 5 year plan is to increase agricultural output and reduce the import of grain, as India is still importing one third of its grain from the Allied powers. The second point is to increase the dairy production and bring about a white revolution in India. It also has the aims of improving the education, healthcare, and rail and transportation infrastructures of the subcontinent. To increase the agricultural output, cheap farmer loans are provided and the irrigation systems are improved. Agricultural research institutes are also established in multiple places to help the farmers improve their yield. In the dairy sector, multiple cooperative factories are opened on the Amul model, and heavy government incentives are given to these factories. In the year 1948, India also tries to join the United Nations. But America is skeptical of this move because it sees India as going into authoritarian regime. But through multiple diplomatic visits, America is assured that India would become a true democracy after this 15-year span, and hence India is admitted into the United Nations. In the year 1949-1950, India sees three of its leaders and members of the National Cabinet pass away. In 1949, Muhammad Ali Jinnah passes away and his portfolio is taken by Shafat Ali Khan. And in 1950, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and Sharat Chandra Bose both pass away, and the Home Ministry is taken by V.K. Krishna Menon, while Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan becomes the Work, Power and Mines Minister. By 1950, all the smaller railways which operated in India are combined into one, and the railway is nationalized, forming the Indian National Railway. In this period of time, the road and rail infrastructure of India is also improved, and around 40,000 kilometers of tracks are laid. Around 800 stations are refurbished, and one new one is built in New Delhi to serve as the national railway station. By 1951, the road network of India is expanded by around 40,000 kilometers, and the country road systems are improved and paved. The agriculture and dairy output of India also increases, and India goes from importing one third of its grain to exporting some of it. In 1952, the second 5 year plan is launched, and it aims to improve the mineral sector of India, especially the iron and steel and the oil sectors. It also looks to improve the power grid and power production in India, in addition to continuing the goals of the first 5 year plan. To improve the power production in India, four major hydroelectric projects are started: the Diamer Basha Dam over the river Indus, the Bhakra Nangal Dam, the Damodar River Dam, and the Nagarjun Sagar Dam. The power grid is also modernized and expanded to reach the rural regions of India where there is no access to power. With funds from the UN ECOSOC and the Trusteeship Council, 800 new primary schools are opened and 400 new secondary ones are established too. And education is made compulsory till the 8th standard. The healthcare sector is also reformed to make a three-tier system composing of a general hospital, a specialty hospital, and a multi-specialty hospital. With funds from the United Nations, around 400 general hospitals are built, and multiple more specialty and multi-specialty ones are built too. Geologists search and find oil fields and natural gas reserves in Assam, Bengal, and the Bombay Presidency. And oil wells and natural gas extractors are established in various places. The Oil and Natural Gas Commission of India is also established, which oversees the extraction of oil and natural gas throughout the country. The ONGC also commissions three refineries, one near Bombay, one at Visakhapatnam, and one at Haldia in the state of Bengal. In 1954, diplomatic and trade relations are also established with the United Kingdom, as Netaji and most of the Indian freedom fighters believed that Though the British government was oppressive and cruel, the British people or the United Kingdom itself was not bad. In 1955, the Tata Iron and Steel Company in Jamshedpur is subsidized by the government and given aids to help in modernization and investment. The Steel Authority of India Limited is established and construction is started on three new iron and steel plants, one in Durgapur, one in Bhilai, and one in Bokaro. And the modernization of the Mysore Iron and Steel Company is also commenced. In 1957, with help from the USSR and UNESCO, the Indian Institute of Technology at Bombay is established. Then, three more are established with help from the US, UK, and West Germany at Delhi, Madras, and Kanpur. And some other regional colleges are given the status of the National Institutes of Technologies. In 1954, the Chittaranjan Locomotive Works in Chittaranjan in the state of Bengal is opened, and with transfer of technology contracts from the United Kingdom and West Germany, the diesel locomotive works is established in Rajshahi in the state of Bengal. The electric locomotive research and production works are established in the outskirts of Lahore in Punjab, and two coach factories are established, one near Chennai and one in Kapurthala. By the year 1957, India starts importing massive amounts of crude oil from Britain and its colonies and starts exporting refined oil and the byproducts on a large scale. In 1957, the railway factory is also established in Bangalore and the rail wagons and trucks factory is established in Varanasi. India also starts exporting manufacturing grade steel to countries in South Africa and Southeast Asia. Ports are established and modernized at Karachi, Mumbai, Bharuch, Kochi, Vishakhapatnam, Kolkata, and Chittagong. The third five-year plan is started in 1957, aimed at improving and modernizing the Indian Army, Navy, and the Air Force. In 1958, the Border Security Force is established as a paramilitary division of India with the duty of guarding India's borders during peacetime. Recruitments to the Army, Navy, and the Air Force is encouraged, and the equipments are modernized by importing weapons both from the US, UK, and the USSR. Planes, tanks, artilleries, and machine guns, along with army equipment, are imported under the transfer of technology contracts. By 1960, the existing ordnance factories in India, including the Ichapur rifle plant, are modernized, and new ones are opened at Quetta, Karachi, Tiruchirappalli, Mumbai, Kulna, and Peshawar, and the vehicle factory at Jabalpur is also established. In 1961, the ordnance factories received contracts to manufacture the Bofors 40mm L-70 gun, and hence India becomes one of the only three countries in the world which manufacture the gun and starts exporting the variant to various Asian and African countries. In 1960, the Hindustan Aeronautical Limited is also established with its headquarters at Bangalore. During this 5-year plan, multiple universities are also established, like the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, the Indian Institute of Science, the School of Planning and Architecture in Delhi, the graduates from which are recruited by the government for its multiple building projects and urban planning schemes. As the third 5-year plan ends in 1962, the eyes of the world turns to India to see whether India transitions into a democracy or continues down the authoritarian path. But India lives up to everyone's expectations, and on the 26th of January 1962, India's constitution is passed by the Constituent Assembly and declares India as a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, promising justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity to each of its citizens. The constitution in this timeline is more or less similar to our timeline, with some changes, one of the major changes being that of reservation. Seats are reserved for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and other backward minorities in both primary and secondary education, and it is decided that 2% of the government's annual budget should be used to give scholarships to the meritorious students, a percentage of which is reserved for the minorities and other backward classes. There is no reservation based on religion or caste in government jobs, but it is decided that the people below the poverty line will be given preference. The common understanding being that if one person has got an equal status in education, one can compete easily with the general students. In 1963, Mahatma Gandhi was declared as the father of the nation by Netaji passes away, and a national mourning of 7 days is conducted. A month after Gandhiji's funeral, in the month of May 1963, the first democratic national elections of independent India are conducted. Before the elections, the various constituent parties of the Azad Hind Party are given the freedom to break away, and Muslim League and some other minor parties break away from the party. The forward bloc remains in the party, and the party is renamed the Indian National Congress to remove any memories of the authoritarian regime in India. The Congress party is also redemocratized and elections are held for the post of the president. Though Netaji could have easily stood and won the post, he decides not to stand as he wants to give Nehruji a chance to lead the country, and hence he rallies on behalf of Nehruji and he wins the post of the president. In the first national elections, the Congress party wins 460 out of the 660 seats in the Lok Sabha, and the Muslim League wins 150 seats, becoming the leader of the opposition. A government is formed by the Indian National Congress with Nehruji as the Prime Minister, and Dr. Rajendra Prasad is later elected as the President. And Subhash Chandra Bose becomes the first democratically elected Defence Minister of India. In 1964, India, or Hindustan in Hindi, is restructured into 23 states and 6 union territories, namely Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Balochistan, Sindh, Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Orissa, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Hyderabad, Mysore State, which is later renamed to Karnataka, Goa, which was liberated from Portugal in 1960, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. And the various union territories are the National Capital Region of Delhi, Daman and Diu, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, Puducherry, Shahid and Swaraj Islands, and Lakshadweep. On the 27th of May 1965, in the middle of his term as Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru passes away, and hence Shah Nawaz Khan takes over as the interim Prime Ministers and by-elections are held. Before the by-elections in January 1966, elections are held inside the Congress for the post of the President. Lal Bahadur Shastri wins both the Congress general body elections and the by-elections and hence becomes Prime Minister. In the next general elections also, the Indian National Congress wins and Shastri ji is elected as the Prime Minister for a complete term. In both the governments, Subhash Chandra Bose acts as the defense ministers and continues investing heavily in the army. The international politics by the 1960s has changed drastically. In the 1940s and the 50s, various colonies in Africa inspired by the Indian independence movement through means both peaceful and armed gained their independence from their European colonizers. Some of these colonies are Egypt gaining their independence from Britain, Libya from Italy, Ethiopia also from Italy, Angola from Portugal, Madagascar from France, and Congo from Belgium. Perceiving their precarious positions, most of the European colonizers start giving the colonies dominion status in order to prevent them from breaking away. The colonies which are already dominions, especially those of the British, become like present-day Canada, who are mainly independent but share a monarch with the United Kingdom. The status is also given to Algeria and Indochina by France. In the 1960s, the Cold War between the East and West is raging, and there have already been two proxy wars, one in Korea between the North and the South Koreans, and one in Iran. In 1961, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, along with the presidents of Egypt, Yugoslavia, and Algeria, starts the non-aligned movement. The non-aligned countries remain a mutual trade partner to both the sides but do not engage in any of their proxy wars. By 1967, some more countries also join the non-aligned movement, but there are also countries which remain neutral but do not join the non-aligned movement. In this timeline, the Cold War factions are a bit different, as the Middle Eastern countries remain dominions to their European overlords. The Middle East and Africa do not become communist hotspots as they did in our timeline, and this place is instead taken by Iran and Afghanistan. On the 26th of January 1967, on the 20th anniversary of Indian independence, Vikram Sarabhai establishes the Indian Space Research Organization as a civilian organization heavily subsidized by the Indian government. And it launches its first rocket, which reaches the outer atmosphere in 1968 from Kerala. In the following years, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose becomes the elected Prime Minister of India for one term, and in the year 1978, the father of Indian independence passes away. India continues to grow economically at a fast pace and, owing to its young population, becomes an attractive destination for foreign investment. Even in this timeline, the communist China grows rapidly and outcompetes India and becomes the number one exporter in the world. And even in this timeline, China is no friend to India, as China sees India as its main rival, and Indians criticize for continuing their one party system even when economic growth has been obtained. Nevertheless, in this timeline, India becomes the democratic alternative to China and attracts huge foreign investments and competes China at various points economically. And that is where I'll end this video. Thank you for watching and kindly like, share, comment and subscribe. And don't forget to press the bell icon beside the subscribe button to get notified whenever a video is uploaded. Thank you for watching and have a good day.